So kids need to read, and they need to read a lot. Why? Because of this chart. Okay? Now, they need to read a lot because of the first reasons. For pleasure, for humanity, for empathy. But they need to read a lot because of that chart. This is fact. This is something that we know is true. The more children read, the better readers they become. Teachers, is that true? That's a fact. Is that right? So in order for that to happen, in order to get to the top, they need to read a lot. They need to read a real lot, right? And the only way that's going to happen is what's called independent reading. How many of you know what independent reading is? Raise your hand up high. How many of you don't really know what independent reading is? Raise your hand up high. I'm going to tell you. Because it's a core belief of Boundless Readers. It's one of the reasons you're here today. When we talk about putting books in kids' classrooms, putting books in teachers' classrooms, in their classroom libraries, it's for independent reading. That's what it's for. Independent reading is also called sustained silent reading, SSR, drop everything and read, DARE, free volunteering reading. I call it something much more unique. I call it reading. This is what it looks like. It looks like this. If you walk into a classroom that's doing independent reading, during reading time, this is what you'll see. This is what we want to see. And this is what they need to be doing every day in school. And we need to make it a priority because many of these kids will not read outside of school. We have to, the only way we're going to have them read a lot is if they read inside school, right? Classroom libraries are absolutely essential. We've heard about classroom libraries. This is what they look like. When we talk about your donations helping Boundless Readers to put books in classrooms, these libraries were partly funded by Boundless Readers. These are the books that these children are reading. If we want them to read 25 books a year, I'm proposing at least 20 of them minimum have to be from independent reading. So if you have a classroom library, to give you an idea, how many books do you need? You need a lot of books. A rule of thumb is at least 10 books a kid. That means if you have 30 kids, you need at least 300 books in that classroom library. If you don't have that, you're not going to get kids to read a lot because independent reading is free choice reading. With the teacher's guidance, as we'll talk about, but it's choice reading. You have kids with different tastes. You have kids with different reading levels. Every teacher in here knows you need a huge library in order to get kids to read these books. And the more they read, the better readers they'll become. And so what books go in the library? The books kids want to read. Action-adventure books, romance books, nonfiction books, dystopian books, realistic fiction with characters that the kids can identify with, steampunk, vampire books, zombie books, alien books, sports books, books that connect to kids' cultures, Dr. Seuss books, funny books, books about the past, books about war, graphic novel books, fantasy books, picture books. These are the books that we need, that you are here helping to support to stock in these libraries, because these are the books that these kids want to read. And these are also, I got to tell you, they're awesome books. Who here in this room has read at least one of these books on this screen? Look at that. We're meeting in the room later for a book club. This is awesome. Here's the thing. A lot of people think that independent reading is this. Just find a book and read. And it gets a bad reputation because of that. People think the teacher doesn't really have a role. It's all about the books. And you know what? It's a little bit of a romantic notion. Because here's the thing. If you go into a first grade classroom and you bring in a pile of new books and you put them on the rug and you tell those kids, go at it. Those first graders will devour those books, won't they? They'll devour those books. If you do that in a 7th grade classroom, those kids will pull out their cell phones. That's what they will do, because that's part of our competition right here. The teacher has an absolute essential role to making independent reading work. If we want to get kids to read 25 books a year, minimum, well, there are 3 keys that have to happen. They need to have books and a lot of them. They need to have time to read them every day, and it needs to be considered sacred time, as important as anything else that goes on in the day. I say quiet reading time is like recess. Has to happen. Finally, you need teachers. You need teachers who are passionate readers, who know books, who know genres, who know authors. You need teachers who do book talks every day. You need teachers who make all of this a priority. Here is one teacher that does that, and I really want you to see what she does. This is Penny Kittle. She's a high school teacher. This is her new book, Book Love, which is awesome, right? Penny Kittle is a reader. Just like her students, she keeps a log of everything she reads, and she shares it with her students regularly. They see her as a reader, as someone who's passionate about books and the ideas in them. She keeps track of all of her students' independent reading every day. Every day, when they're doing into reading time, this sheet goes around the room and those students record what book they're reading and what page they're on. So she knows exactly who is reading what, who's finishing what, how far they're reading, how far they're coming, are they making progress. She's conferring with the students, talking with them about the book they're reading. She also has the students keep track of the books they're reading, and she has them, it's hard to read here, but this is at the end of the year. She does this each semester. The students have to list their books from hardest to easiest because she wants them to realize, first, she has a job to do, and that is to help her kids start choosing harder books as they become better readers, to start challenging themselves. She also wants them to learn that the more they read, the better reader they become, and the faster reader they become. You can't see that on the bottom, but this girl, Penny Kittle, says this student was a non-reader when she entered her room. At the end of the year, she had read 23 books. Quarter 1, she read 192 pages a week. Quarter 4, she read 302 pages a week. That's what a teacher does in independent reading. It's not just pick up a book and read, right? That's what we want. We want kids reading intensely, passionately like that. And one of the best ways that teachers get that done, and teachers, we know this. We know that oftentimes you don't want to shove it. What you want is a nudge, right? So the great teachers, when they do this to get their kids to read, a lot of times all you have to do, you give a kid a book and say, read this book, a lot of times it's like, no. But if you walk up to a kid and you say, I know that you love dogs, and this book is about a boy who loves dogs, I think you're going to enjoy it. And a lot of times, those kids will take that book and they'll start reading it. You're nodding your head, isn't that true? Especially that book, because that's Love That Dog. That's an awesome book, right? The other thing that helps is a culture of reading. This helps teachers in the classroom because we want to create a culture of reading in the classroom, but we need to create a culture of reading in the school, in the entire school. My son was fortunate enough to go to Burley School in Chicago. His former principal is right there, Barbara Kent. Okay? You're really the most popular person in the room, Barbara. I want you to know that, okay? Whenever I went to Burley, this is what I saw all over the school. All over the school. It was a school culture. You walked in that school, everywhere you went, it said, we love reading here. We love books here. This place is a place of readers. And there are a lot of Boundless Reader awardees at Burley, right? Yes? Yes. And it wasn't, if you notice, it's not just the kids, it's the teachers, it's what they're reading, right? This is from another school I did some work at. Oop. Again. Every classroom door was decorated with a book that was read in that classroom. You walked everywhere in the building, the door was decorated with a book. So we want to go back to this and figure out, how do we get there? How do we get kids reading 40, 50, 60 minutes a day, right? And how does it add up? Well, if they read 25 minutes in school, and then you say you need to read 25 minutes at home, that's 50 minutes a day. Do you know 50 minutes a day in a school year adds up to 2.8 million words? They've read almost 3 million words in a school year only with their independent reading books. It doesn't include anything else they read in other subjects that was assigned reading. Just independent reading, they've read almost 3 million words. Which brings me to running. Anybody running here? Who runs? Raise your hand. Be proud. Be proud. Okay, I'm a runner. Let me ask you something. Runners know this. You know this if you bike, if you exercise, anything, right? If you're going to go out and run for the first time, can you go out and do 5 miles? You can't, can you? You can't do it. What do you have to do? You have to start at like an inch, right? And then you sweat, and you start 2 inches. You have to build up, is that right? You have to build up, right? What's that called? What do we have to build up? What is it? You read my mind. You need to build up your stamina. You know what else you have to do when it comes to reading? There's something called reading stamina. If kids don't develop reading stamina, they can't read 2.8 million words in a year. Those of you who teach in a grade, like even 3rd or 4th grade, when kids start reading more chapter books and longer books, it's not uncommon. Me, as a former middle school teacher, at the beginning of the year, kids couldn't hold a book and read it for 15 minutes. They couldn't stay focused for 15 minutes because they had no reading stamina. We have to develop their reading stamina. The only way we're going to develop their reading stamina is if they read a lot. It's the same thing with running. If you want to develop reading stamina, they need to read, and they need to read a lot. And the only way that's going to happen is with independent reading, one of the core principles of Boundless Readers. That's the only way it's going to happen.